Welcome, ladies and gentlemen and all else, to this year's Halloween special. In tradition with this channel, it is time to once again delve into the world of frightening creepypastas here on Halloween night, the night dedicated to all things horror. I have gathered 10 stories for you all, each more horrifying than the last, and we shall go through them together tonight. Keep in mind that these stories weren't all written in 2018, but simply discovered by me this year. Links to each story shall be in the description, so you know to check each and every single one of them out for yourself after this video. Let me know which story is your favorite in the comments below, or if there was a story you feel I missed out on this year. On this journey you will go from one place to the next on this roller coaster of fears, and hopefully, you will find it chillingly enjoyable. Without further ado, let's start the show. These are the top 10 scariest creepypastas of 2018. Number 10. I love the rain. I love the rain. I love how it just seems to make everything better, smoother even. Most people just like the idea of rain. They like the sound it makes when heard from inside, or how it can be an outward expression of the sadness they feel within. They like to look gloomily out the window and dwell upon the sad and unfair things in life. But I'm different. I don't love it because I find it relaxing. I don't enjoy sitting in the window and absently daydreaming. No, I love to be in the rain. I love to be in the kind of rain that is so heavy that it makes it hard to see or hear. You see, nobody notices the woman with the chloroform rag sneaking up behind them as they're foolishly rushing to shelter, nor is anybody as likely to see the woman dragging the limp body to the dark alleyway where her car is parked. And nobody sure as hell will hear the muffled screaming coming from the woods masked by the rain. It hasn't rained in a while, but there's supposed to be one heck of a rainstorm tonight. And I can feel the first droplets already starting to fall. Number 9. The Girl on the Train. I live in the UK. A colleague at work heard this from her boyfriend. He works with someone who said that his sister's friend got on the last tube, that being subway train, home a couple of weeks ago. When she got on, there were 5 rows of empty seats, but the last row had 3 people sitting in it. As she was a little shy, she went and sat opposite them. She settled down and looked up to see the woman sitting opposite her staring right at her. So she got out her book and started to read, but every time she looked up, the woman was still staring. The train pulled into the next station and a man got on. He looked up and down the carriage, took a look at her and the people in the opposite seats, and came to sit next to her. As the train left the station, the man leaned back and quietly said in her ear, "If you know what's good for you, you'll get off at the next station with me." She was scared, but thought the best idea would be to get off at the next station as he asked, as there might be people around. The next stop came up, and she left the train with this man. The man said, "Thank God, I didn't mean to scare you, but I had to get you off that train. I'm a doctor, and the woman sitting opposite to you was dead. The 2 men on either side were propping her up." According to the guy who told this story, the girl and the doctor called the police, who stopped the train at the next station. Number 8. Aquarium. I haven't left my apartment for days. Even though I'm obsessed with what I've created, it's simply that I physically can't. My phone keeps flashing, my stubble looks untidy in the rippling, dull reflection, and the sounds of weather are becoming obscure to my deafening ears. The brown algae has rooted through the pores of my fingers and is clinging itself to my crusty flesh like platelets. If I were to detach my hand from it, the roots growing slowly up and underneath my arm could die and poison me. I am not hungry nor thirsty. The fungus provides me nutrients. These roots and organisms fuel me. Little round fish occasionally try to pop out from the fungus, some popping out through the slime from their eggs, some not. They will add to the millions of tiny worm-like fish already squirming around the tank in shoals. They tickle me when they squirm through the narrowing gaps of my developing webbed hand. This tank used to be for normal fish, Goldfish, minnows, zebrafish. Zebrafish were my favorite. They all died and I never replaced them. I left the light on, with the filter switched off in a dead, withering tank for months. A speckled, thin brown algae erupted in areas and intensified across all 4 glass walls of the tank. Ready to clean it out, I saw a pulse. Intrigued, I fixed my stare. Again, a pulse. Rare at first, occasional in the following few days. I replaced the 24 wattage bulb with a 36. Weeks later, I submerged my hand in the freezing, stagnant water. Hundreds of tiny leeches nibbled on my flesh, not even breaching my skin. Ticklish. Hundreds of pulses eagerly pumped towards my approaching hand, caressing it on immediate contact. My entire hand is consumed. The roots bulge out in my wrist and lower forearm. I feel thin jets of liquid shoot up through my veins and arteries. There is a cold, thin band on my arm where the transformation of blood temperature develops. The band rises every day. The scales on my hand are heating up by uncountable periods. The roots no longer pain me. My hearing is minimal. My vision is semi-thermal. I stick my tongue into the aquarium again and drink the squirming leeches, hoping to temporarily numb the freezing pain that is wrapped around my right elbow. I flex the muscles in my fingers and pop millions of pre-birth fish in eggs. The leeches will detect them and feast upon the unborn. These scales are beautiful and warm. I wish never to detach myself from this Pandora. My phone buzzes again, but I choose to ignore it. I will eventually be found. I must remove all worry, enjoying my last few days here with true paradise. Number 7. A Kidnapping. It's hard to imagine what it's like to be kidnapped. I've tried often, probably every day for the last 4 years, imagining the unlimited scenarios, anything from the kidnapper's first contact to the actual abduction, and the subsequent transport has plagued me for many sleepless nights. It is hard not to focus on the betrayal he must have felt trusting that stranger, the absolute fear and possible pain he felt while maybe getting dragged away into some van or truck, thinking of how they may have subdued him if he started to fight back. Sadly, the only thing that brings me some measure of comfort is imagining him poking an eye out or busting the bastard's testicle with a hard kick. I wish that's where my imagination ends when I dwell on my son's kidnapping, but it's not. That rabbit hole is deep and filled with things that take days off my life by just the thought of it. Truth is, neither myself nor my ex-husband know what really happened. At times I believe I am literally in hell on earth. My world has been upside down since my son went missing from my yard. Thinking towards the future is impossible for me now. So my days are cramped up in my home, reliving every detail of the day he went missing. Most disturbing, however, is that the most mundane of things torture the worst. Veering through the kitchen window into the backyard I haven't visited in 4 years and seeing the sun-drained abandoned swing set and slide, hearing the theme song for the kid shows he routinely watched, seeing the back of the head of a child who slightly resembles mine if he were 4 years older at the grocery store or park or everywhere. The worst, however, is the sound of the phone ringing. Every time it sounds, my body gets filled with the most conflicting emotions. Is this the call I found out if he is alive or dead? Or worse, that it is neither? Truth be told, a knock on the door is equally as jarring. Never more so than today, as it turned out. When I opened the door, a large man in uniform greeted me with tender eyes and said, "Ma'am, we received a call today. Apparently one of your neighbors allowed their cat to get out of the house." The two sentences couldn't have been more crushing, another dagger of lost hope, but this one cut especially deep due to the tease of his blue uniform. As the disappointment drenched me from head to soul, the gentleman continued to ask me for a favor. Over the years, the ground under the houses in this neighborhood tend to sink quite a bit. Silly cats love nesting down there. Would you mind if we go into your backyard and retrieve the cat from under your house? Ma'am? Are you okay? He obviously knew I wasn't. As the blood rushed from my head to my broken heart, I meekly mumbled, "Why didn't I know that?" Number 6. You can go back to sleep. I swear, I'm not watching you sleep, but you're always afraid of me. I've been screamed at before, been shot at, even stabbed a few times. My first thought is always, you ungrateful human. Then I remember. You can't remember. I made sure of that. This time was worse than most. When you sleep, your mind wanders across planes, dimensions, and worlds. I'm a bodyguard of sorts. I wander with you and I protect you. It's why you're still alive. When you wake up and see my blue eyes in the dark, it's not me you should fear. You should fear the reason I woke you up. You're safe now. And another thing. When I leave, you stay awake all night, fearing for your mortality. There's no point. Go back to sleep. You'll be fine until tomorrow, and then I'll be there to protect you. If I stay, you should be worried. I'm not going to hurt you. I'm not going to kill you. If I can't save your life, I'll save your soul. I know you're just a human, but if you keep acting like a pathetic mortal, I will leave you. I'd like to see you handle them on your own. Number 5. Terrors in the Night. Mark sat up in bed, gasping for air, which eluded him for quite some time before he was finally able to breathe again. Sweat soaked his forehead and pillow as he struggled to come to grips with what had just happened. He knew all too well what events recently transpired. It was something that was familiar now. Visions in the night interrupting the middle of a peaceful slumber. The terrifying memory of endless night terrors introducing an equally terrifying creature. The creature which had plagued his dreams as a child. It was a nightmare consisting of a creature entering his room after the sun had set. Mark could remember clearly the gurgles and snarls which emitted from within the throat of the thing. Mark would always hear the sound of footsteps methodically making its way down the hallway. Then, it would reach his bedroom door. At that point in the nightmare, Mark would bury his head under his pillow right before the menacing creature entered his room. The thing would slide itself onto the dresser directly adjacent to the bed and watch Mark. He never saw the thing within the nightmare, but he always felt its ever-present glare peering into his back. The dream would end with Mark dozing off again, to which Mark would wake up in the morning in a pool of his own sweat, shivering in fear. Despite being much older now, Mark was still just as frightened of the monster as he had been when he was much younger. Thus, when he heard the footsteps trudging down the hall and towards his room, in a house where he was the sole occupant, he buried his head into his pillow as he always would. He shivered under the covers as he heard his bedroom door creak open. He trembled as he heard something mount his dresser, wincing as he heard a deep yet faint groan coming from the direction of the nightmarish creature. He could hear the gurgles and scratchy voice penetrating his ears, causing him physical discomfort. All the memories of nightly torment from his childhood came rushing back to him, and they affected him so strongly that he almost felt as if he were going to cry. What was probably a few minutes of waiting felt like an eternity for Mark, before he finally heard the thing exit his room. There sat Mark, sweating in his bed as the morning light seeped through his curtains. He quickly shook his head and stood up, stretching and yawning. The nightmare was so terrifying that he couldn't sleep at all, and his fatigue was apparent in the forms of bags underneath his eyes. He opened his door and trudged to the bathroom, needing to urinate. He finished and approached the sink, where he washed his hands and dried them on the towel that sat beside him. It was when he looked down, however, that something caught his eye. An orange tablet container stood on the sink, unopened. Mark picked it up and twisted the container open. Mark frowned as he remembered his trip to the pharmacy earlier the other day. He had stopped there to pick up his insomnia medication. Insomnia caused by years of torment caused by his worst nightmare. It was completely full. Mark didn't sleep a wink the following night. Number 4. The greatest honor. I was raised in a very religious community. God and Christ are still at the very center of my life, and I live every day in service to them. Praising them still excites and ignites the very soul within me, although I must admit, some of the joy and magic I felt when I was much younger has left me. My devotion has not waned, I can assure you, but perhaps the dulling of such pleasure is just the natural, if tragic, effect of aging. But oh, how wonderful it was when I was a boy. Each year, my particular church would hold a very special service in honor of Good Friday. In preparation for this service, all young men below the age of 13 had the opportunity to enter a contest, a kind of raffle, I suppose. The prize for the winning fellow was to perform a very special role in the upcoming ceremony. All of the boys from our entire community would practically froth at the mouth, waiting for the earliest possible moment when we could throw our hats into the ring. What spurred us on was much more than just a desire to win. It was the true and deep devotion that filled our young hearts. It was thrilling to be among such a crowd. The Good Friday I remember best was that of my last eligible year. I was due to turn 13 in June, and then I would never again be able to enter my name to take part in the service. I had entered every year before then since I turned 9, but had never once been selected. I remember holding my little ticket with a long number printed on it, hoping I would hear the pastor call it out. My little brother Frederick had also entered the contest that year. I dare say, he was even more excited than I was. When the pastor announced that it was time to select a special winner, I recall how Frederick jumped up and out of his seat and cheered louder than anyone else. "All right, gentlemen," said Pastor Francis. "Are you ready?" We all cheered wildly, and the pastor continued. "All right now, Dale, would you bring me the basket?" Dale, the pastor's wife, dutifully did as her husband asked. She held the basket full of tickets up, and Pastor Francis fished around rather dramatically for the winner. At last, he had made a selection. "Here it is, folks. The winner, a very special participant in this year's Good Friday ceremony, is whoever holds the ticket number 643. As he read the numbers, I began to shake. So far, each number had perfectly matched my ticket. I listened intently as the pastor went on. 5, 8, 6. Groans erupted all around. "That's it, folks," said Pastor Francis. "Who's got it? Who's got it? Where are ya?" I could barely move. The winning number was right there on my ticket. I wonder to this day if that wasn't the greatest moment of my life. I had never won anything before, and my eyes nearly filled with tears as the realization washed over me. It was then that I turned to look at Frederick. His bowed head and downcast eyes left me with little doubt as to what he was feeling. My heart ached for him. I'd never seen him so disappointed. I knew in that moment that this was a divine test, and, as difficult as it would be, I was determined to pass it. Before Frederick could protest, I grabbed his ticket and switched it with mine. "Pastor!" I shouted. "The winner is right here! Over here!" I looked down at my little brother and smiled. He beamed up at me, the very picture of gratitude. I knew I'd made his Good Friday. A moment later, he was headed up to stand with Pastor Francis. "Well, hello there, son," said the pastor. "Are you ready to perform the most important duty of this entire service?" Pastor Francis held the microphone to my brother's mouth and, without hesitation, the boy said, "Yes, sir!" "Hallelujah!" shouted Pastor Francis. "Let us begin!" As he spoke, 4 deacons came up behind him carrying a wooden cross. "As I'm sure you all know," the pastor began, On this day, the Lord our God sacrificed his only Son, so that we sinners might have a second chance at eternal life. Amen, came the staggered response from the faithful. Today, brothers and sisters, the pastor continued, we renew that covenant right here. Yes, faithful, the Lord has chosen young Frederick to serve as a tangible, visible remembrance of the ultimate sacrifice that he himself made nearly 2,000 years ago. Let us remember when we behold Frederick in his place above the pulpit over the next year that God is good and his love is real. The deacons laid the cross down and positioned my brother upon it. I was so proud of him. He didn't even scream until the second nail went in, which was remarkable for a boy of his age. When the deacons had finished, they hoisted him up for all to see. Frederick's wide eyes surveyed the cheering crowd before settling on me. I smiled, wiping away a tear, and silently blessed him as he began to convulse. I knew in that moment that, even though I had missed my last chance to have such a great honor, that it couldn't have gone to a more deserving young man. Number 3. You promised. Don't look behind you. Seriously, don't. There's no point. There's nothing there. You probably looked anyway, and since you're still listening, I guess I was right. Nothing was there. It strikes me as fascinating that whenever you tell someone, don't look, or don't turn around, their first reaction always seems to be the opposite. If I told you that looking at the ceiling directly above you would kill you in a most painful way, your reaction would likely be to do exactly that, just to prove to yourself that there is nothing to worry about. It certainly doesn't matter now, especially since you probably already looked at the ceiling. But what will you do when there is a real threat? Do you blame the warning for tempting you to look, or do you blame yourself for being foolish enough to not heed the warning? Let's try something. Keep your eyes focused here. Promise me you will not turn around under any circumstances. Do you promise? If so, good. If not, well, that's your choice. This is a test of both your honesty and your guts. I'm sure you'd like to turn around right now, but you promised me you wouldn't. A promise is a promise, and you have nerves of steel for following through. I am acting in your best interest here, trust me, because I promised him that I would keep you looking this way while he got in, and he promised me that as long as you didn't look, he would make it as quick and painless as possible. So, seriously, whatever you do, don't look behind you. Number 2. A Scarecrow. I can hear the whistling again. It's the final weeknight, and again, he has come. Whistling that little ditty, repeating it again and again, enough times to drive the sanest of men crazy. I can see through the window, the light through the cornfield, the rustling of plants, the maddening whistling. It's all culminating to a feeling of hopeless dread, like being faced with a gun while you're up against a wall. I know he wants to find me, but I don't know what he wants with me. I don't want to know what he wants. All I want is for this to be over with. The lamplight is becoming brighter, the whistling is becoming louder, and the dread in my stomach is getting worse and worse every second. Only my need to keep quiet is preventing me from either screaming in fear or throwing up from the sickening tension. For a while, it feels like time is torturing me, making things seem slower than they are to keep my anxiety levels sky high, but then, it feels all too soon when he finally shows his face through the green fog-like plants. All I can see is his smile, a stitched, malicious smile, probably soon shut to keep his hatred from spewing forth. The dim lamp swayed back and forth as he came through the corn effortlessly, almost gliding through like a ghost. It's nauseating, seeing this dimly lit figure wander towards my little house, but it's even worse trying to figure out what he even wants from me. Does he want me dead? Does he want me to go mad? I can't tell. But what's for certain is that whatever he wants is not pleasant. My gut tells me to make a run for it, but I know for a fact that he's faster. The times I've tried to escape have usually been the worst, or at least the most terrifying. I felt his cold, clammy hand on my shoulder. That's how close it got. He's at the door. I can hear it slowly creeping open. God knows how he can open a locked door, but at this point, I'm too frightened to care. I hide in my cupboard, sweat dripping out of me like I am a water balloon that got punctured. The whistling is now right under me, and the constant creaking of floorboards is giving me shivers every time I hear it. He's coming up the stairs, and a dim light is slowly creeping through the crack in the cupboard, brighter and brighter, the whistling getting louder and louder. Every synapse in my body is getting so tense, it hurts. The light stops getting brighter, and the whistling like it's almost right next to my ear. And then I let out a breath. The whistling stops. No. Oh God, no. He knows where I am. He'll find me and it'll be all over. I can't hear his breathing. Just footsteps. Getting closer and closer. A few seconds go by. No noise, no whistling. Just infinitely tense silence. And then, the whistling begins again. He walks away, leaving me in my scared stupor. The door closes, the light fades, and I am left scared and alone. So here I am, dreading the next week, and dreading that next time, I won't be so lucky. Number 1. Stone Villages. The world is a small place. Give it a look sometime. Most countries are beautiful, and savvy travelers can always find those hidden cultural gems, but be careful. If you're out in the more sparsely populated regions of almost any country, you may spot a picturesque little village where all the houses appear to each be fashioned from a single, enormous black stone. If this occurs, don't bother checking your map. It's quite accurate, and you made no wrong turns while following it. Stone villages have been recorded in Morocco, New Zealand, Honduras, Fiji, New Mexico, Mississippi, and the Philippines, to name some. Survivors' accounts don't say what these villages are, where they came from, or how old they are. The first written mention of stone villages comes from the present-day Slovenia, around 343 AD, when 6 monks went out to map the countryside. Only 1 returned. They are likely far older than this. No known record of the villagers' language has been found. Accounts of their culture and religion vary wildly, despite all of them sharing seemingly identical practices. The only consistent and therefore reliable information across accounts is what course of action will allow you to leave the village once you've found it. These accounts come from various cases, some of lone travelers, some of lone survivors of groups. The compiled instructions are as follows. If you have seen the village, made out its strange volcanic walls, even from a distance, you've already crossed the threshold. You are now a visitor. Do not try to turn back. Someone watching might consider your version rude, and someone is watching. If you do turn around, you will not get far. Approach the village as nonchalantly as you can manage. A guide will be waiting for you at the village's edge, where the farms and mills hug the surrounding hills or valleys like fabric. The guide will greet you warmly in whatever the official language of the country you're in is. She will most likely be the only villager who speaks a language you can potentially understand. If you have any gods, pray that she is the only one. She will offer you a tour of the village. Accept. If you don't speak the country's language, nod politely. Accepting the tour grants you protection, initially, and allows you to walk freely in the village. You are now a guest. Feel free to explore, for you won't see another place like this. Take in the architecture. The walls and doorways of every stone house will be intricately carved with breathtaking curves and angles. Some carvings will be writing in an unknown language. Comparisons of this writing range from Maya glyphs to Sumerian cuneiform to a strange form of ancient Korean. Rest assured it is none of these. Some accounts suggest that if you stare at the writing long enough, you may start to get inklings of what it says, as though piercing together an old memory. You may otherwise ask your guide to translate, but be warned. The writing is that of prophets, and not everyone is built to hear the words of the gods. Other carvings will be sprawling murals depicting massive wars, rich landscape, and gods descending. The stone faces will carry more emotion than seems possible, and you will understand centuries of history in one glance. Should the mural be one of gods, don't look any of them in the eye. Throughout the exploration, your guide will have been taking you towards the village square. The square will contain the temple, the inn, and the festival hall. No written descriptions exist of these buildings, but rumor has it that survivors mumble about their beauty decades later on their deathbeds. The square will also be full to bursting with villagers buying and selling wares of all kinds. You may meet them later on. In the center of the square will stand an enormous statue which you will be drawn to. Estimates place it at 15 meters tall. The statue will be haunting, but much like a word you just can't remember, you will not be able to place what the statue depicts. The image will round your mental corners every time you try to approach it. At this point, you'll be overwhelmed with curiosity and frustration. Nothing will be as necessary as understanding the statue, but you would awaken something. You may ask your guide about anything in the village. She will have an answer, but no matter how much it scratches at your sanity, you must not ask about this center statue. If you manage to fight off the curiosity, the guide will then take you to the villagers who will greet you in their language with empathic cheer. The vendors will offer you all kinds of fresh fruit, plump and perfect ripe. Feel free to take some. It's not poisoned, and more importantly, it's delicious. Whether or not you accept, each villager will fall in line behind you as you pass, singing and forming a single file line. This is the guest's procession, and it is a deeply spiritual celebration of your arrival. As such, as more and more people join the cheering line, you may begin to hear crying, screaming, laughing, unnatural echoes, and far more inhuman sounds mixed into the now dissonant chants. Do not disturb the ritual. No matter what you hear, you must not look behind you. The last person waiting for you in the square will be the High Priest. Greet him politely. He's honoring you with his hospitality. He may only favor you with a smile and gesture of welcome. If so, thank whatever god is looking out for you. If not, well, you'll hear his smooth voice greeting you in your own native language, whatever it is. You must not look at the High Priest after you have greeted him, and you must not show any emotion at his using your native language. The High Priest will begin by asking a series of questions about faith, commitment, and sacrifice, questions about yourself that even you may not know the answer to. In the unlikely event that there are several of you, the High Priest may only speak to one of you. You must answer as truthfully as you're able. If you reply with the slightest hint of doubt or dishonesty, the High Priest will say in a pleasant, chiding tone, "The gods don't appreciate being lied to." From here, accounts vary as to what happens. Some suggest the heretic is cannibalized on the spot, others suggest he or she is dragged into the temple kicking and screaming. There is no record of the temple interior. If the High Priest is satisfied with your answers, he will invite you to stay the night, stating that the night is the festival of Patronage, and the gods themselves will be honoring the village with a visit. You must try to decline this offer. Think of someone or something you truly love, look at the High Priest in the eyes and say firmly, "I'm afraid I have my own purpose to serve." You must be genuine when you say so. It can be your own religion, a friend or lover, your career, your art, as long as it is something that you would be willing to dedicate your life to. If you answered honestly, the High Priest will nod in understanding and wish you well on your way. If, however, you are a person who loves nothing and no one passionately, you'll soon know. The High Priest will instead smile and say, "Please, spare us a night for the gods." Accept this offer. He will not ask a third time. The village will have an inn, oddly enough, and you'll be taken to its finest room. The walls inside will be just as elegantly carved, the bed will be dressed in fine silks, and the lantern will be made of stained glass. Lock the door and make yourself comfortable. Later that night, you will hear beautiful haunting music and see mesmerizing lights through your window. Do not look outside. Remain in your room. No one will come to get you, and you will not be harmed. It's advised you bring a book to read for this part of the day. Do not, under any circumstances, attend the festival. If you haven't gone to bed by the time the music stops, do so immediately. Blow out the lantern and pull the curtains shut. Make sure your door is locked. Until sunrise, you must stay silent. The gods are visiting. If all goes well, and you make it to sunrise unnoticed, you'll be free to leave unharmed. The villagers will bid you farewell in the square with silent waves and very wide, still smiles, quite unlike their festive greeting. The high priest will escort you to where you first spotted the village, and he may even give you a parting gift. A small pendant of a glyph, perhaps, or the tooth of some unidentified creature. Thank him for his hospitality and be on your way. The village will not have moved during your stay, so simply follow your map back the way you came. It's better you do not turn around. They may insist you stay a little while longer. From this point on, you may want to avoid the countryside. The stone villages are always moving, and no one leaves for a second time. Well, there you have it. 10 stories done and over with in the spirit of Halloween. I certainly hope you enjoyed your stay for this year, and I hope to see you again very soon. I wish each and every one of you a wonderful Halloween night, and I hope you collect memories for years to come. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe and share it around. It genuinely helps my channel immensely. Otherwise, you can always check me out on Twitter, Instagram, or Snapchat, or if you want to support me more directly, check out my Patreon page. With that said, I think that should be all for tonight. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Stay awesome, everyone. Happy Halloween. Goodbye. I don't enjoy sitting in the window and absently draying. Insomnia caused by years of torment caused by his worst nightmare. What?